Welcome to Healthy Chats with the Doc. Today we have Dr. Brooke Leverone talking about one of my favorite topics. It's folic acid. There's so many things related to why we even started Epigenetics RX related to folic acid and methyl tetrahydrofolic. I can say it, don't ask me to spell it, but I'm there. So Doc, let's start out with what is folic acid and how is it different than methyl tetrahydrofolic or MTHF?
Yeah, folic acid. I'm just going to turn my camera around because it doesn't look like I'm connecting. So I'm just going to show everybody our Zoom window on the computer. And then everybody can still see us chatting together, just differently. There we go. Okay. So folic acid, right? We're all told, oh, take your folic acid, especially as women, our breads and cereals and milk, everything's fortified with folic acid, our fortified foods with folic acid, right? So folic acid is vitamin B9, which is folate, but folic acid is the synthetic form of folate. It is not the natural form of the vitamin. It's the synthetic form of the vitamin. So they're very different. Folate is the natural form of B9. Folic acid is the synthetic form of B9.
Well, Doc, that's interesting because you hear the word synthetic, and especially since we work with functional medicine doctors, they don't like that word synthetic. They like the word natural.
Right.
So then how does methyl tetrahydrofolic relate to folic acid or B9?
Yeah. Okay. So we're gonna break this down, and I'll try and make it as simple as possible. And yes, the synthetic versus the natural, and that could be a whole other conversation, right? Maybe one day we'll do that. What does synthetic mean, and why is that sometimes bad and sometimes okay? In this situation, it's not okay, and we'll get to that. But basically, folate is the natural form of B9 that we'll find in like our dark leafy green vegetables. And then the folic acid is the synthetic version. And why this is important is because the body takes folate and methylates it into methotetrahydrofolate. So we make methotetrahydrofolate, MTHF, from dietary folate. And you can also supplement with already methylated folate if you're a poor methylator, right? And we've talked about that a lot in a lot of our talks, your genetics and methyl groups and why methyl B12 is important, right? Some people need to supplement with methyls because they don't methylate their folate efficiently. So folate, the body methylates folate and into methyl tetrahydrofolate. And so some people supplement with methyl tetrahydrofolate, MTHF, especially if they're a poor methylator. So it's the more active form of folate because folate by itself doesn't necessarily do anything. It has to be methylated. And then that methylfolate is what does all these other things in the body that's really important.
Yeah, it was kind of like a light bulb just went off when you said, it's just, it needs to be kind of activated. So I went back to your factory analogy as like how you talked about the factory. So, I now I see this folate in the back of a cart in the train and it's just there, and then you dump it in and then it gets activated and then it actually it does something.
Yeah. It's sort of like the first step of the factory. The first thing that the factory does is take that supply train folate and convert it into methylfolate, and then it disseminates it to the rest of the factory to do its job. Exactly.
No, I like that. That visual is actually really powerful because I remember when we first started epigenetics, I don't know, was it 2016 or something, and Chris, the pharmacist, she was trying to formulate the for one of our doctors who had asked to create an injectable version. And so she was working at it. And I remember another doctor going, oh, we'd like some folic acid. And I'm like, well, no, this is not injectable folic acid. This is methyl tetrahydrofolic acid.
Yeah, and it's very different, and it's hard because we're told, because we're so programmed by just media and culture and advertising, fortified foods, take your folic acid, buy our folic acid, right? And the problem, I'm just going to jump right to it. The problem with folic acid is yes, okay, it's synthetic, right? And synthetic isn't always bad depending on what we're talking about, but most of the time when something's synthetic, the shape of the molecule ends up being slightly different than what our body needs. So it's often, a square peg in a round hole. I remember being a kid, I tried really hard to get that square peg in the round hole. It doesn't work. And so with folic acid, we know there's a couple problems that have been documented with folic acid. Because it's a square peg in a round hole, the body can't methylate the folic acid efficiently. It can't go through that machine. The body doesn't turn folic acid into methylfolate efficiently. So we get buildup of folic acid in the blood. This creates a couple problems. One is that high folic acid in the blood can lead to, it can hide a B12 deficiency, especially a B12 deficient anemia. If you have high folic acid in the blood, it can mask if you're actually deficient in B12. So then we don't really know what's going on. And when they measure serum folate, it doesn't differentiate between folic acid and dietary folate or methylfolate. So when you do serum folate, it's not a good test because it doesn't tell us if it's folic acid or methylfolate or folate. And as I just mentioned, if you're eating fortified foods or taking a supplement with folic acid, you're going to have high levels of serum folate come back because we know folic acid builds up in the blood because it can't get through the machine. It's like stuck outside the factory. It doesn't fit in the factory door to be able to get converted into methyl groups. So it builds up. It slowly will start to go through the machine, but it's not an efficient process. And then the other problem is that because there's so much there's so much folic acid trying to get through the door of the factory, it's like a traffic jam, and actual folate can't get through to become methylated. So it literally slows down your methylation process, because if you just had dietary folate, they fit through the factory door. It goes through, it gets methylated, you have all the methyl groups that you need, it's perfect. Or if you just take methylfolate, they get to go in the secret VIP entrance to the factory because they're already methylated, right? But if you have folic acid building up, you're going to create a traffic jam because they can't fit through very well. And so your dietary folate that should be able to pass can't, and then it can't get methylated, and then you get decreased methylation. So folic acid, again, causes high level, folic acid will build up in your system. It can mask a B12 deficiency. It gives false readings on a serum B12 test, and it will block your own methylation process, which if you listen to our other videos, we've all talked about how important methylation is. And this is going to lead me, because I know we're talking about this, so I'm just going to go with it, is that the reason why is folate important? Why are we being told this, right? So folate, and I'm saying folate because we don't want folic acid. I think you guys just all got why we don't want folic acid. Folate, though, is really important. And the reason folate's important is because you have to make methyl groups from it. And one of the main things that these methyl groups do is regulate DNA and protein synthesis. So we know that we have high rates of neural tube defects in fetuses and newborns when folate is low, because there's not enough methylation to be able to regulate DNA and protein expression and development. So that's why we are told culturally, especially in women, to be taking our folate, take your folate, take your folate, so that if we get pregnant, because it's in the first 6 weeks that this is happening, so it's often before you even know you're pregnant, that folate is the most important. So, but if you don't know you're pregnant and you're not taking folate and you're deficient, then you're at higher risk for things like a neural tube defect. Now, back in the 80s, the FDA had us start fortifying our food. So most everybody is getting folic acid in everything. So we don't have this occur as often. But again, we just talked about how that can also be a problem, because you still may not be methylating as efficiently as you could, or sufficiently enough. It's like just barely enough to decrease our rates of neural tube defects. Not completely, but they're much less common than they used to be because of the fortified foods. But and then again, it's just marketing. Like, the companies came out with they were able to make a folic acid so that they could put it in the foods. everybody made money, they sold it, they marketed the heck out of it. And, because I'm not saying anything crazy, right? We live in a for-profit country, so there wasn't bad intentions there. They were trying to get us to, get all of our folate so we could prevent neural tube defects. So we were all grown up and programmed on folic acid, which is why it's now just confusing, because people are like, folic acid, it's the same. Well, it's not the same because of the reasons I just said. And it is important because it helps with hundreds of things. First of all, that methylation pathway and, DNA expression, protein synthesis, and thus preventing neural tube defects in newborns. So, folate, no folic acid. It is important. And those are kind of the reasons why.
Yeah, that was good. It's super interesting because, you see these prenatal vitamins, right? And they're folic acid, and then of course, B9 is kind of an umbrella, right? Where folate, methyl tetrahydrofolic lives, so you have that, but
yeah.
yeah. And so, so it's obviously B vitamins are really important. There's lots of research that shows B vitamins and specifically methyl tetrahydrofolic or folate can help with depression, even dementia. So there's more and more research coming out. But what you said, and because believe it or not, we're running out of time again. But can you talk a little? Because this is what I heard as a layperson. So what you can do is you can get a buildup and it can hide a deficiency. And so if you're doing your traditional allopathic testing, your doctor not trained in functional medicine may see, oh, wow, your B vitamin or your folate levels are way off the charts or high, or, you have more than enough. And because you're taking the wrong kind of B vitamin, it actually can be dangerous to things like heart health, homocysteine, and those types of things, correct? If you're not getting enough.
Yeah, because deficiencies and because like you said, high folic, folic acid builds up in the blood and can result in a high folate blood test, which doesn't differentiate between folic acid and folate or methyl tetrahydrofolate. And that can mask a B12 deficiency. And if you're missing a B12 deficiency, then you're missing, a bigger problem that can be going on, because B12 is important for cardiovascular health, nerve health, brain health, energy, and hundreds of other things in the body. So you're, doing yourself a disservice if you're sort of masking what's actually going on. We need to actually look at what's going on, like you said, from a functional perspective for what it is that you actually need.
Yeah, I know. It's just like every time, I remember 15 years ago when we started, and a woman will come in and they'll go, my doctor said my labs are normal, but I feel crazy and I can't sleep. And so it's really important to get the right kind of testing and go to a doctor who understands how to read and prescribe the right testing, right?
Right. As always. Yeah, exactly. We talk about, in our traditional medical system, they're there to make sure that you're going to survive to the next day, but not necessarily if you're functioning at your best. And that's just, they don't have time. It's just the way the system's set up. But if you really want to figure out what it is you need specifically to live your best life and to optimally function, working with a functional medicine doctor is the route that you need to go, so that we can look at, is it folate? Is it B12? What are you taking? What should you be taking? What should you not be taking, to optimize your body's ability to function at its best?
Well, that we believe in B12 shots.
Right. Yeah. This
Methylated.
is why, the methyl B12 is so important, so that we can get our methyl groups, because some of them don't have methyl groups, and then methyl folate, same thing.
Exactly. Well, doctor, thank you again for enlightening us. I have new visuals. I've got a new appreciation for methyl and folate into the factory.
Yeah.
All right, doc. Well, you have a great day, and I'll talk to you next week.